Welcome back. It's English and we're looking at paper 1. I want to thank Liberty. They have been in education in South Africa for over 30 years and they make this kind of program possible. Please would you download the Tenfold Education app. You will find such useful material there. And would you follow us on YouTube at Mindset Learn. We're moving on to question 4, which is the cartoon question. Once again, a total of 10 marks. Please read the cartoon really carefully. Questions will talk about the frames, and the frames will be numbered. But what students do is, although it says refer to frame 2, they refer to frame 3. Please make sure you go to the right frame. They will identify the characters for you. They will say the little boy is so-and-so, the mother is so-and-so. Make sure that in the frame you have been referred to, you identify the character. The characteristics is the personality of that person, what they are like as a person. Look for their feelings. How do we know what they're feeling? So you know from emojis how people are feeling. That person maybe was a little bit exhausted. I want this one to be very exhausted. These are meant to be bags under the eyes. Look at the way faces are drawn. And then verbal is what do they say, and you have to think about the tone of voice. Body language, absolutely critical. Bodies tell you what they're feeling. It's a form of non-verbal communication. Remember to be specific when you're dealing with body language. Don't just say the arms. Say the arms are up in the air or the person has a fist. And you might get a question, usually there is a question, on what does the body language tell you? What does the facial expression tell you? Now, what they usually do, if I go back to my frames, they say, look at the body language and the facial expression in this frame, then contrast the body language and the facial expression in that frame. So you've got to say, in this frame, the person looks like this, they look just a bit tired, and in this one, they look absolutely exhausted. So is there a real contrast? Maybe no. But if it were like this, you'd say, yes, they're really happy in this frame, but they're utterly exhausted in that frame. So look for the contrast, body language, facial expression from one frame to another. And you're looking for a 2-mark question. Remember, you've got to do both frames, or you've got to talk about the contrast, or you won't get the marks. If you just say this, and there's no but there's something else later, they won't give it to you at all. You've got to do both. Then there'll be a question that says, identify visual clues. So they will say, state 2 something or other, 2 ways in which we can see the sound. And that will count for 2 marks. And that will be visual clues for sound or anger or something, an accident, a bang. Then a question on visual techniques as well. You have to say what the characters are doing. So I look at what they look like and I say what they're doing and I get my marks. Remember, in literature, setting is always time and place. Usually in the cartoon, it's the background. But if you can see both time and place, go for it. Look at the size of characters or fonts. Think about stereotypes. So a stereotype is a typical example of a lawyer, a typical example of an accountant. So it'll be very simplified, a very simple view, and will be exaggerated if it's a caricature. So let's say you've got a very tiny little body down here, arms, legs, and you put an enormous head on that. That's a caricature. It's exaggerated, it's bigger. or distorted, twisted in some kind of way. Don't forget to look at font size as well. So size of characters, size of font. You must call them by their names. You do not say a thinking bubble or a think bubble. You need to know those terms. And then, this is really very tricky. Typically, they ask you, describe the humor, or they say to you, is the cartoon funny? Or do you find the cartoon funny? Look for these kinds of humor. Be careful, this one is usually verbal, and it's when you say the opposite of what you mean in order to hurt somebody. But humor in a cartoon is usually irony. So please, won't you go straight for irony and see if the cartoon has irony? And you get 2 or 0 if you are asked about irony, and you follow that pattern. So let us say something like, there's a young man and he is interested in a girl, and he tries to get her attention, but his mother arrives and ruins everything. This is what I mean by X but Y. So this young man is interested in this girl. He's decided on how he's going to get her attention and organize a date with her, but his mother arrives and mother ruins everything, makes him look like a little child in front of the girlfriend. So always in a cartoon, look for irony. It's the most obvious kind of humor, and it's one that you should be able to find. So if they ask you if it's funny, it's a good way to start. Often you're asked something about, do you think the cartoon's effective? Or back to, do you think that the situation is funny? So let's have a look quickly at what cartoon strips are meant to be about. So they're meant to be entertainment. And there's meant to be a little story involved. And they are meant to show us what we as people are like, what society is like. They ask us to think about the world in which we live. Cartoons ask us to think about how you feel about things like boys trying to find a date with a girl and the mother getting involved. So they finally help us to understand what it is meant to be human. And the situation is meant to be a real life situation. So don't say things like, no, it's not funny if somebody falls flat on his face. So imagine somebody is running and then he falls flat on his face. Don't just say, no, this isn't funny. We are meant to laugh because we see our own mistakes, our own embarrassment. And we're meant to laugh at that in a way of easing the kind of embarrassment we've all felt when we've fallen or slipped or fell in the mud or whatever we did. So, yes, it is humorous, but it's not as though we are removing whatever pain or suffering is going on. What we are doing is asking us to laugh very gently at ourselves. Now, where do cartoons not laugh gently? When they are satirical. And satire is when we criticize, it's criticism of sin, of evil, of wickedness. But the whole point is that we use humor. We are not saying that that sin or that evil or that wickedness is funny. We use humor to criticize it. So people will laugh and then they'll go, oh, but I'm getting the message. So try to understand what satire and irony are doing. They're not necessarily making the situation ridiculous in a way that we don't take it seriously, but they are poking fun at it. And you need to get a 6 out of 10 for that. We move now into the last section. This is your language question. If you use previous question papers and you look at what the examiners have been asking over at least the last 5 years, you can get 20 out of 20. And remember that language questions are also found in the advert section and in the cartoon. So there could be another 1, 2, 3, 4 questions, 4 marks, based just on language. When you work with the previous question paper, go to the memo and see how the examiners answered those questions. So mark yourself. And then, if you don't understand why the answer is the way it is, get help. Post a question on Facebook to us, ask your teacher. So what things should you be revising? First advice, those 3. They will ask you to combine sentences. They could say using a word like although. Sometimes it's a coordinating conjunction like but. You must know what a tag question is and how it works. Go over your active and passive voice. Really, really important. So just remember, when you are looking at active and passive, keep the form of the tense. If I give you a simple tense, you give me back a simple tense. If I give you a continuous tense, you give me back a continuous tense. Don't change the tense. If I give you something like has seen, the boy has seen the bird, you keep the has. The bird has been seen by the boy. If I give you a must, he must see the principal must be seen. So you must keep whatever I give you. Keep that. Don't change a simple tense to a continuous. Then other things that come up really, really regularly. Reported speech. You must do direct to reported speech. Very seldom they give you reported to direct, and there will be 1 mark for the correct punctuation in the reported speech. Then practice changing sentences into questions, or giving the negative form of the question, or changing the tense. So rewrite the sentence in the present continuous tense. Rewrite the sentence in the simple past tense. You must know what it is. Then go over your parts of speech. Be able to recognize all your parts of speech. Again, look at past papers to help you. Watch for plural forms. They do like things like story, stories. Watch for the correct form of the word. That's when they say something like, we shall beauty our dining room. We shall beautify. So this is a noun, this is a verb. So you need to practice that. Degrees of comparison. They very often say, give the correct degree of comparison of the word in brackets. Go over prefixes. They might ask you, change responsible into the opposite, into an antonym, using a prefix. Go over synonyms, homophones, and homonyms. They like asking you for synonyms. Homophones and homonyms, they like asking you, use this word in a sentence of your own with a completely different meaning. So practice that. Go over common errors. The first question in the paper will have 4 sections. So you will have 4 questions, let's say 1A, B, C, D. And there will be 1 mistake in each question. And they ask you, find the error and just write down the correct word. What kinds of things do they ask? When students have used an apostrophe for a plural, the difference between its and their, and their. So let's just go through this. If you said the boys were standing at the bus stop, just write out the correct word. You would just write out boys. Then its comes up in virtually every single English paper. So you must know the difference. This is the one that they keep using. So the people saw its beauty. Let's say I'm talking about the sea. The people saw its beauty. That is, it is. And you've got to write its, not it is beauty. Right, there. Now, I don't know how people have helped you remember this. I know some people say that there has the word here inside it. So that must be place. There is over there. Go and sit over there. It's place because it's got here in it. There, some people say, well, this has got I in it. And I is a personal pronoun. So there is an adjective from the personal pronoun. So it's people, their book, their mother. And this has got the apostrophe, so a letter has been left out. It is they are. So it's there, and their. But you must get them separated. Then, throughout this paper, you can be asked to quote consecutive words. What does that mean? It means one after the other. Quote 3 consecutive words. They've got to be following each other. It's not one word there, and one word over there. So watch for that. And you've got to get 8 out of 24 for the question. So it's 20 for question 5, and then 4 marks, which are part of question 3 and question 4. And what I am saying is if you go over all of this, so let's just look at a checklist. So I know the following, yes or no. If you look through that, and you can say, I can recognize all of that, I can do all of that, then you will get 24 out of 24. And it involves a lot of practice. So you must go over past papers. So let's just look at these. Do we know what a conjunction is? So conjunctions join words. There are coordinating conjunctions like and, but. Usually in South Africa, for coordinating conjunctions, teachers teach fanboys as a mnemonic. For and nor, but, or, yet, so. But they're also subordinating conjunctions. And I told you the one that they quite like is although. Then articles, a or an or the. A noun names something. An adjective describes a noun or a pronoun. Prepositions, to, for, by, with, from, in, under, over. The finite verb, we've talked about the finite verb so often. Above all, it gives you the tense of the sentence. An adverb describes a verb or an adjective or another adverb. It describes itself. They don't often test interjections. That's things like oh. Compound words and adjectives are made up of more than one word. You need to know all of your punctuation. Parenthesis is brackets, double commas, or double dashes. So brackets are a form of parenthesis. You need to know your hyphen because it creates compound words. Concord is agreement, especially the agreement of the subject and the verb. We've talked about singulars and plurals. We've talked about the apostrophe for omission. We talked about cause, but also for possession. Pronouns, verbs and auxiliary verbs. We talked about this. We talked about this. We talked about this. Go over abbreviations and acronyms. We talked about prefixes. Don't forget suffixes. Roots and etymologies are not usually tested in FAL, but you must know your tenses. So there is so much that needs to be learnt. And the best way of doing this is go over at least the last 5 years of matric papers using the memo, and you will get a very good idea of what's being tested, and you will be revising. And I wish you everything of the best. From me, bye-bye.